Hey guys, really excited today. I am going to be giving a presentation this evening to a virtual trade show. As part of my job, I do get the chance to stand on a stage and talk to lots of people about technology, but today this is the first time I've ever done a virtual trade show. So I'll actually be giving the presentation from here in my office to an audience spread mostly in the United States, but certainly there were maybe a few people there from Europe. The presentation is going to be on Skype for Business migration strategies and how you can bring conference room based video conferencing systems into the Skype for Business world. As part of that presentation, I'm going to be talking about technology, but not from the perspective that people normally expect. Everyone, when they give a presentation about technology, always talks about the latest and the greatest and the biggest and the best. That's not what I'm going to be talking about. Change that has happened in the last few years where the technology isn't necessarily about being the best. It's not about having the greatest quality or the biggest number of pixels or the greatest audio codec. It's about, is it good enough for you to be able to do your job? And this is really where Skype for Business's sweet spot is. It's not about the technology. It's about being able to have an online meeting. It's about being able to bring colleagues into your meeting and get the meeting done and forget about the technology. So to illustrate that, I just want to talk a little bit before I get on to what I'm going to be doing later, and just talk a little bit about where is that point of good enough? How do we get to it's good enough? So whenever we look at a piece of technology, we measure it based upon qualitative measures. We look at our TVs and say, are they 720p, are they 1080p, are they 4K, do they have different color depths, what's the latest and greatest? But there comes a point, certainly in the communications market, where we've reached a point where it's good enough. Now what do I mean by good enough? Well, let's draw a picture. So we draw a graph and we say this is not enough, and over here we've got lots, and this is bad and this is good. So for a long time in the PC market we had computers that were underpowered. They never quite delivered on what we said, but over time things got better, and as we got more compute, things got better. And so we went from bad and we started to get better. But every single year along this path there was, we had 486s, then we had Pentium, then we had all through the Core series, but they reached a point where it was actually good enough. The quality of what we were trying to do, whether it be a Skype call, whether it be video editing or anything like that, it just was good enough. From the user's point of view, our willingness to keep up with the technology curve starts to flatten out. And a good example of this is something like your iPhone or your Android phone. There were many people who went through the early iterations every single time a new device came out. They said, I've got to have the iPhone 3, I've got to have the iPhone 4, I've got to have the iPhone 5. In fact, I was one of those people, but I haven't upgraded my iPhone since the iPhone 6. Why? Because the iPhone 6 is good enough. Actually, to the point where the iPhone 6S, there was such a minor improvement, and then the iPhone 7, yes, it had a lovely camera, but it wasn't enough to make me upgrade. And the reason is we've passed this point. We've passed the point of good enough. For most people, good enough is perfectly acceptable. There are always going to be things with lots more features that are better quality, whether they be 4K TVs or 8K TVs or whatever it is the next big thing is. But for the majority of users, this is the most important point to reach, is the point where it is good enough for them. Okay, so what's good enough got to do with the presentation that I'm going to be giving this evening? Well, Skype for Business is a great example of this. It is not the best video conferencing system out there. It is not the best audio conferencing system out there. It is not the best instant messaging system out there. But it is the most prevalent. Why? Because it's easy to use, it's built into the tools you have, and you don't have to think about it. You just press a button, start a Skype meeting. So in my presentation this evening, I'm not talking about how do you replace Skype for Business. I'm talking about how do you take an organization that has Skype for Business and integrate your existing video and audio solutions into that platform, because that platform is good enough for most users. And therefore the incremental increase over changing to a different platform is not something they're willing to consider. So before I get on to the presentation, obviously this evening's presentation I'm not going to be able to include in the vlog, but I will put a link up at the top to a previous version that I recorded. So if anyone is interested in the presentation, you can see it from there. What I'd like to talk about for the remainder of today's vlog is presenting itself and things you can do to make yourselves a much better presenter, and just the way that you come off on stage. I want to give you 4 things that will make your presentations just stand out from the rest, because honestly, the rest are just mediocre. Okay, so there are a few things you can do to make sure that you don't embarrass yourself or the people that you're presenting on their behalf during your presentation. The first thing you can do is spell check your presentation. I've lost count of the number of presentations I've attended where obvious spelling mistakes were in the presentation. So first of all, run the spell checker, look for those little wavy red lines and make sure you get your spelling right. The second thing is make sure that your desktop environment is clean. Now it doesn't have to have every single file removed, but make sure that what is on your desktop isn't going to embarrass you, doesn't give your competitors any leads. So if you've got a document on there, maybe a proposal you're building for somebody, make sure it's not on your desktop whilst you're presenting. Because these little icons and the text underneath them are very easy to read when they're projected on a huge screen behind you. Number 2, check your cables and double check your cables. Make sure that the cables that are connecting you to the display, that they work. You know if you need to make any configuration changes on your laptop, you know how to do them. Check and double check. Also, make sure if you need dongles, that you've got all the relevant dongles. You've got your HDMI or your VGA or your DVI or your whatever you need to connect to the myriad of different display technologies that are out there. Don't rely upon other people to bring dongles, because you can guarantee you'll be the one that ends up being embarrassed. Also, make sure your laptop is powered. The number of people I see presenting from a laptop and they're on battery power, and up in the top corner of the screen you see they've got 5% left and they're only a quarter of the way into the presentation. Make sure that you bring your power supply. Again, don't rely upon other people. Make sure it's plugged in, but also make sure that your battery in your laptop is fully charged, because there may come a time during the presentation when you accidentally pull this off and you don't realize. Number 3, get yourself a clicker. You look like a professional if you've got a clicker. Why? Because you can hold this in the palm of your hand, and there are many makes. This just happens to be a Targus one. There's nothing more unprofessional looking than a presenter who, every time they want to change the slide, walks back and presses the button. Or those idiots that stand there on stage and say, "Next slide, please." Change your own slides, learn your presentation, do them at your own pace, and look like a professional. These things don't cost a lot of money, 20 bucks, 30 bucks, something like that. Get yourself a clicker. 4, practice. Practice, 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 practice. If you take nothing more away from today's vlog, you need to practice your presentations. The number of people that get on the stage and stand there and go, and sort of look down. I saw somebody the other day with cue cards. If you need cue cards to give a presentation, you shouldn't be giving a presentation. Get up there, spend the time beforehand and learn your presentation inside and out. During your practice sessions, you are going to make mistakes. If you find you're making a lot of mistakes, then take a break. Go do something that doesn't require you to think about your presentation. Go do something, some job that you've been promising to do for other people. Just take a break, go do something different. Coffee's great as a way of sort of giving you a boost of energy, the caffeine flowing through your system, and it will help you be a little bit more animated. Don't drink too much, you might be a little too animated, but it means that I can get on with my presentation, get on and practice and make sure that when I come to deliver it, I'm word perfect and I This evening, when I deliver my presentation, it will be absolutely on message, I'll be well rehearsed, and therefore I'll be more relaxed. I'll actually enjoy giving the presentation rather than worrying about what's going to be on the next slide. Am I going to be able to get the words out correctly? Because I've practiced it all. Even though tonight's presentation is virtual, this is what I'll be wearing. Why get dressed up when no one can see you? Well, the main reason is this is what I wear when I present. When I go on stage at a conference, this is what I'll be wearing. This helps me get my head into the game. So this is what I'll be wearing tonight, even though nobody can see me. Okay, now if you don't mind, I need to get on and practice.